Hey everyone, my name is eproos, and I'm a licensed attorney practicing out of Los Angeles, California. I advise many small businesses acting as general counsel. Obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a lot going on with small businesses. We're going to discuss the stimulus package and programs that can help your small business. I brought in a good friend, John Price, who has over 15 years human resources and benefits consulting. John Price is a partner with the benefits and human capital practice for Lockton Companies in Detroit, Michigan. John, thanks for coming on today. Let's start off with what are the biggest challenges your clients and organizations are feeling at this time?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Eric. And let's define small businesses first. So the United States Small Business Administration, when they talk about small business, they mean organizations with 500 or fewer employees. So to me, that feels like large businesses, but it's all about the context of the definition. So businesses that have 500 employees or less, along with even larger businesses, are facing business liquidity issues, cash flow issues. The lack of cash has significant cascading effects on an organization. The biggest expense for most organizations are their labor costs, the cost to retain and support their workforce. So companies are pursuing furloughs and layoffs, as we've seen already in the media, and with a few weeks left, at least from the president's perspective, in terms of social distancing and stay-at-home orders in many states, we're likely to see additional layoffs and furloughs in the coming weeks as companies simply don't have the bankroll to keep employees employed.
Right. So, with President Trump extending his guidelines by 30 days, what can companies do to keep their employees and keep the companies themselves paid during this time?
So far there are two major pieces of legislation that can help employers maintain some liquidity and make sure that the health and financial futures of their workforce are less disrupted. And the first is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was passed maybe 2 weeks ago, which deals with paid leave, up to 80 hours of paid leave for employees who are forced to be isolated due to a government order, to take care of their children whose school has been canceled, or to take care of a family member who may be suffering from coronavirus, and a couple of other qualifying reasons.
Okay. And then how are the employers paying for this?
So covered employers under the legislation, which would be employers with fewer than 500 employees, are eligible to receive refundable tax credits for paid sick and protected leave based on the type of leave that the employee is taking and whether that leave is for the employee or the employee's family member. As explained by the IRS, the tax credits for paid sick leave benefits and expanded family and medical leave benefits will be provided for each calendar quarter in an amount not to exceed 100% of the qualified sick leave wages and qualified family leave wages that are required to be paid under this legislation. So it's not exactly a cash infusion, it's a tax credit at the end of the quarter. So some employers may not have the cash for this to work, so they're laying off their employees. Employers who can afford to give furloughs and keep employees on the payroll and maybe have them take this leave of absence are offering COBRA subsidies so that employees can extend their medical and other benefits after losing their job at a reduced cost. The CARES Act, which is the second piece of major legislation, also increases the weekly unemployment benefits by $600 a week.
So, I'm glad you brought up the CARES Act. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. How does the CARES Act help the employees and the employers?
So the CARES Act goes much stronger than the leave provisions from the first piece of legislation. They allow for direct cash injections for organizations, some tax credits, and a few other provisions that seek to ease administration in other aspects of businesses too. So let's talk about the CARES Act helping organizations with liquidity. There are several programs that it established. The first is the Treasury Exchange and Stabilization Fund, which is a loan or loan guarantee program. Those are for larger businesses or businesses with more than 500 employees. The Payroll Protection Program, which we've been hearing a lot about because it affects so many people who are classified as small businesses. And the Payroll Tax Deferral Program, which is a loan. and the Employee Retention Credit, which is a tax credit. So for the Payroll Protection Program, this is Title I of the CARES Act. And the Title I is called Keeping American Workers Paid and Employed, which establishes this payroll protection program. And that definition of that Title I really defines and emphasizes the policy reasons for this legislation: keeping workers paid and employed. So as we've mentioned, this program is for employers with 500 employees or less, but it includes also self-employed, independent contractors, and sole proprietors. So the scope is really large. And around 50% of the workforce in the United States are organizations that have 500 employees or less. So this is really critical, sweeping legislation that is going to touch many organizations and many people. So the program provides a loan for employers for payroll costs, which includes employee benefits and can be expanded to include mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. And these loans can be up to a total of 2 months, 8 weeks worth of costs.
So this covers more than just payroll for these companies.
It does. But the US Treasury is saying that borrowers should be aware that because of the demand for these dollars, it's anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for non-payroll costs. So it's important to analyze this, when you're dealing with putting your payroll costs versus rent, utilities, and other administrative costs into the loan application. So beware of pursuing that when you're looking at these loans. And let me just back up and say, I don't know if I mentioned it, but these loans are forgivable. So although they're loans, we'll get into the details of that in a second, they're forgivable loans. So it's a cash infusion that can be forgiven with some stipulations.
Right, and I think right now is a perfect time to say, for anyone watching this is some general overview of how John is advising his clients and things he's seen and things I've seen as well. So, take this, formulate your questions, and go to your employee consulting benefits company or your attorneys, financial advisors, tax attorneys, anyone like that, and ask more pointed questions. So to go off of that, are there other conditions on these loans that businesses and business owners should be worried about?
Yeah, there are. And in keeping, with the policy reasons for the act, keeping people employed, several other conditions, the first and foremost is organizations need to commit to retaining 90% of their workforce at full compensation and benefits until September 30th, 2020. So that's not a small feat given some of the uncertainty, but it's a commitment that, the government is asking for if they're going to lend this money to organizations. And to also certify their intent, organizations need to certify their intent to restore all compensation and benefits within 4 months after the coronavirus emergency declaration ends. And then finally, one of the biggest pieces is agree not to outsource jobs for the duration of the loan, plus an additional 2 years after that.
Great. So when and where can employers apply for these loans?
So organizations could start applying on Friday, so last Friday, April 3rd. And you can apply through any SBA, Small Business Administration lender, or through any technical terms here, federally insured depository institution. And really that means any bank. Any FDIC bank should be able to issue these loans.
So John, I'm a small business owner. I need $25 million to get going and keep everyone on payroll, cover all my costs. Can I get $25 million?
You can't get $25 million. There is a cap in the legislation. The cap is set at $10 million.
Okay, so I get my $10 million loan or whatever loan, $10 million or less that I qualify for. You mentioned loan forgiveness. Can we discuss that for a little bit? How does that work?
Yeah, so employers submit a request to the lending institution, whoever is servicing their loan, for loan forgiveness, along with supporting documentation. And the lenders are going to have 60 days to make a decision on that forgiveness.
Okay. So if the organizations can't live up to the conditions of these loans when they're due, what is the interest rate?
So if for some reason employers end up having to make additional cuts because they can't continue to pay people at the rate, and after they've taken out one of these loans, what's going to happen? The loan is due in 2 years. Interest is deferred for 6 months. and the interest rate is currently at 1%, and the legislation notes that it cannot exceed 2%. So the government is trying to give people a long runway. Even if you can't make all the conditions, you've got a very, very low interest rate and a fairly significant time period to start paying the loan back.
Yeah, I mean, the interest rate is fantastic compared to even mortgages, and mortgages have usually been pretty low. Where can people find additional information regarding these loans?
The first place would be to visit SBA.gov, the U.S. Small Business Administration website. They can link you to a variety of other more detailed questions. The U.S. Treasury also has some pretty good frequently asked questions pages that a lot of CFOs, CEOs, and boards of directors will want to be reviewing as they determine, their cost-benefit analysis of pursuing one of these loans. And my firm, Lockton Companies, has established a coronavirus advisory practice, and we are laser focused on providing timely guidance and resources to organizations. So, and just beyond the scope of this legislation from other risk analysis perspectives. So for some further information there, visit Lockton, LOCKTON.com/coronavirus, or please reach out to Eric or I directly.
Well, John, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I know it's tough to find a minute or two, especially with your expertise and your clients calling you all the time. So thank you for sitting down today, and hopefully our viewers find this beneficial.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Keep calm and carry on, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, John. None of this information constitutes legal advice. It's for educational purposes only. And if you'd like to reach out to John, his description and contact information will be in the description of this video. Thanks, everyone. Tune in next time.